Anyone you know is looking for summer internship opportunities, Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to grab the mic and be on the air. Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world all year round. Be an on-air personality, talk show producer, or YouTube, TV, podcast editor. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Business Hour. We're broadcasting live today, as we often do, from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio, located in downtown Conroe, Texas, which just happens to be in the middle of one of the greatest places to do business, really, in the entire world. Conroe, Montgomery County is growing. Had a conversation the other day with someone who was in California, and they're planning to move to Conroe. And the primary reason they didn't have family here, no connection, was they did a little bit of research and found out all the growth that's taking place here. So they were going to move themselves, their family, and their business here to Montgomery County. So a great place to be and live and build a business. And we're right here in the middle of it. As we get started today, I'll do my quick thought. How is your business doing right now? Last Friday, today, Monday. How is your business doing? And everybody who owns a business will have an opinion about that, whether it's based on just their feel for the business, whether it's based on looking at financials. But you really need to take stock. I am personally amazed how our economy goes up and down, and all the economists and pundits and people say, well, no, we're edging on recession, we're doing this, that. But the key is, or the most important issue to me, and as a small businessman, is where is the economy related to my business? So it's nice to read those national type articles, even international, but you've got to take that information, take your smarts, if you will, and apply it to your business. The main thing is don't get caught flat-footed. I think here in Montgomery County, again, we're growing. Nobody that I know personally sees the end of that. But that may not be the same thing for you where your business is. Just keep your eyes open. It is a funny time. The economy with the employment versus unemployment. Employment's up, but then unemployment is up, sort of. But so many people have left the workforce. It's got to be confusing. It confuses me, and I have a background in education in that area of understanding the economy. So, again, keep an eye on things. Take stock maybe more often than you normally would. Don't wait till the end of the year, because things could happen in a blink. We know that from some of the depressions or recessions our country's experienced. It's amazing how quick it can come. So be prepared. The Weekly Business Hour is where Montgomery County and businesses worldwide come to talk about the latest in business news, ideas to improve your business, and to be part of a conversation that can make a real difference in your business. I want to remind you, as I always try to do as we start the show, that the show is available on YouTube and Facebook Live. So if you want to watch us as well as listen to the show, you can do it live right now. Just go to Facebook or YouTube, look up the Weekly Business Hour, and then click on the right button, and you can watch as well as listening. Also, if you have a question, if you have an observation, you have a business question about your business, doesn't matter. Send me an email, real simple. Send it to Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. As many of you know, if you're a regular listener, we have a mailbag, and from time to time I will pull out an issue that somebody sent in, a question about some business issue they have or challenge, and we talk about it. And we're going to do that today a little bit later. So please drop your emails, rick@irlonestar.com. Well, today we have an expert guest for you. I always enjoy the experts because, if nothing else, they open your mind to possibilities, maybe concerns as well. But having an expert come and talk to us, we're blessed that we are able to do that. And so today we're going to have a conversation with Adam Fracht, a partner at Stibs and Company PC. Adam's going to talk about the impact of the law on the operation of small businesses in today's marketplace. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. Good to be here.
Well, you know, it's a given. We live in a society of laws, among other things, and there seems to be new laws all the time, or rules or regulations, things that as a business person, it's one more thing I have to attend to, or it can become a problem real quick. Before we get into that, though, let's talk a little bit. I'll allow you introduce yourself as far as what your business background is and your law firm, so people know who you are.
Sure. So Adam Fracht, and I'm originally from Beaumont, and attended college at A&M, went to Tech Law up in Lubbock, and then circled back around and was downtown in Houston for 6 years at a law firm there, and then made the journey up here, and have been here ever since. My family's here. We love the area. Stibs & Co. as a firm is a business-based firm. We really focus on that niche. We kind of stick to a lane that we think is our specialty, which is all manners of helping a business start, helping a business run, dealing with business problems like disputes with other vendors, business partners, employment issues, intellectual property, even estate planning for business owners, as that tends to be sort of a tangent for business owners. So we've tried to cover all of our bases to help a business run smoothly, and when issues come up, to be able to help them handle them.
Well, again, as I said, and I have a background and was trained in the law and practiced law for a short time after I retired from my businesses. I understand, I guess, I've been on both sides of the table, how important of having good advice, a good lawyer. Not only when you're in a jam, because that's when most people think about a lawyer because it involves a lawsuit or something, but a lawyer is an advisor to say, hey, you're doing this in your business, or where are you headed with it? These are some things you need to look out for. How important do you think it is to a business to consider, one of the things to consider a lawyer as being an advisor?
I think that the reason we say counselor at law is very, it's a good thing. We are counselors. We are important to just be part of a process for a business. Oftentimes, for me as a business litigator, we end up dealing with issues that, had earlier steps been taken and advice been at least there been some consult with an attorney early on in the way things were formalized, in the way that we address how things are resolved within a partner dispute or disputes with other businesses or vendors, it would make so much of a difference. But frequently we find up at the end stage, as you said, most people, or so many people, say, I don't need a lawyer until I am in a tough spot. And the truth is, if you have that legal side, if you have that advice and counsel early on in an issue, then when you get down here, and sometimes it's inevitable you get down there to the point where people are fighting, but if your documents are there, if your employee handbooks are good, if your contract has the right language in it, there's so many things that make the dispute so much more pro-you, so much more easy to fight in your favor if you thought about it early on.
Yeah, well, it makes good sense. There's no doubt about it, that preparation and use of advisor. Now, in my business career, and some of the businesses I started or we bought, I had partners. And so I dealt with partner issues. Personally, I was blessed with good partners. And there never, even when we dissolved the partnership, there was never an issue that we had to go fight about. But what do you see? You're a litigator, so I'm sure you've been in a few partnership battles. What is the main problem? I mean, what causes partners to fall out and end up there?
So a lot of the issues we see within partnerships are that, as you said, many people when they first start a business with the guy that's going to be their partner all along. They think everything is hunky-dory early on. Everybody is getting along. We're all marching to the beat of the same drum. It's hard to envision some years later when, for whatever reason, we're not. And so oftentimes what people don't think about is we don't have a written company agreement, right? Or anything. We don't have a buyout provision. What happens if we start adding other people, or we have somebody who wants to exit but we can't agree to a price? Do we have a formula set forth in the agreement for how that's worked out? Sometimes we have a situation where it's 2 or 4 or some even number of people, and these 2 guys say X and these 2 guys say Y. And we're at a position where the business is just inoperable. It can't operate. And ultimately, that can lead to going to court to judicially dissolve the whole business at considerable cost. And oftentimes with a receiver or somebody who gets appointed who also is a cost to break up all the assets and sell everything. And all of those situations can be alleviated if early on you say, even though we are all friends, we all get along, we have to do this the right way. We have to structure the company with a company agreement, with a buyout, with all the things that we know just in case we get down here, it's alleviated. And it's so much more affordable early on to do that than to get here and fight it out in a knockdown, drag-out lawsuit where you don't have those documents dictating what happens.
Yeah, the buy-sell agreement, as I called it, was always a critical piece of my puzzle, at the very least, particularly when you had family, spouses, and whatnot who weren't in the business. So the other partners would feel comfortable that there would be a buyout process if someone, say, passed away or became incapacitated.
Right.
And you're right, it's a lot less expensive to do that up front.
And I think we all get the impetus not to want to do it, because I liken it to a marriage, and you kind of think of it like it's a prenup, and you don't want to do that because it shows like you don't trust the other person, and I think marriage is very much different. But I think we do have to be careful in a business. Trust is great, but you need to have formal documents because it is something that's just a better setup early on, and everybody needs to understand this is not me saying I don't trust you. This is not me saying we're eventually going to split apart. It's just good business sense to have all your documents lined up early.
You make a great point. I think the biggest selling point for me on that particular document was that the spouse, the uninvolved spouse, knew what he or she was going to receive in the event something happened catastrophically and her partner had to, passed on or was incapacitated. They could have some assurance that there's the value, a formula or whatever it might be. So it's funny, one of the formulas that was, one time I dissolved a partnership, been very successful. We made a lot of money, and it was a lot of fun. And it was just myself and another partner. He was the engineer that designed the stuff we did, and a genius guy. And we'd had a lot of fun for 10 years being in business together. Anyway, so it was down to the business. He wanted to go one direction, I wanted to go another, which was, and so we just did what I call a stand-off battle buyout. You decide if you want to buy it, and then the other person says, "This is what I want for it," and you could be willing, as I was, to assume either role, right. Even though he had a great deal of technical knowledge that I had no clue about. Well, I did in general, but I would have to have hired somebody to replace him. But it was a fair way to do it. Both of us saw that,
sure,
and it went smoothly. And everybody did what they said they were going to do, and it was done. And he continued it in the business for another 10, 15 years. So
yeah,
it works. There are ways to do this. There are ways to structure it.
There are. And it only takes once or twice of feeling, probably once, of doing it the wrong way to realize the value of doing it the right way to start.
Well, you end up having these people who don't want partners. And so many times you get into a business that having partners can be a real plus, assuming everyone brings a different skill set or whatnot to the table. The money part, I always found it was easy to find money, relatively speaking, but to find good people and people willing to invest themselves in a business was difficult. But putting different skill sets, depending on, in that case, I need an electrical engineer. I mean, we were designing chips and software and stuff, so I wanted a partner that was fully knowledgeable in that, and it worked out great. In fact, it worked out way beyond my imagination, because he turned out to be, in my mind, a genius on what he did and how he did it. Plus, the guy worked. His wife called me once and said, "Can you call him and tell him to quit working?" He goes in the bathroom and he stays in there with these pages of computer printouts, checking them. And so, yeah, so good and bad partnerships. I believe that no business person should be afraid of being in a partnership if it's properly documented and there's a meeting of the minds in the beginning. Otherwise, catastrophe.
Potential catastrophe, at least.
Well, after doing 3 years of litigation work myself primarily, I would tell clients this is the worst place to be in a fight. And it only gets worse, because then if you get to court, you end up with, say, 12 people that know nothing about you. And you're asking 12 strangers to make potentially a very important decision for you in your life. And think about that. And sometimes people would settle. They'd say, "I need to settle this."
Sure. So it's interesting you raise that, because it's the perception of what a lot of business litigation attorneys do versus what we really do is sometimes pretty striking, because of course a lot of people think, just as you said, that you're in trial all the time. And I think there are different types of lawyers that do end up in trial a lot. In business litigation, frequently the best resolution is not to end up in court. I mean, usually, as counterintuitive as it may sound, we are typically trying to advise folks for any means that are out there, at least let them know of other means that may not end them up in court, and even if it's in court, not end them up at a trial, where, as you said, you have a jury who maybe doesn't find your business issue as interesting and as important as you do. And that's not to say juries do a great job of taking on the issues, but it always is a little bit of a wild card once you're at that stage. Of course, lawsuits themselves, another interesting misconception is of course a lawsuit is probably 95% time-wise pretrial. It is all of the discovery, the depositions, all of the motion practice, all these things. It's only at the very end that you get to trial. And notably, I've never actually looked at the stats on this, but I've heard a number of the mediations we go to where they're trying to encourage you to resolve cases. I believe it's around 1% or less of these kind of cases that actually go to trial. And part of that is people want to control their own destiny. Usually when you have a business and a business dispute, or even business partners, everyone realizes that there is a point at which, when you get to that point of no return and you're going to trial, you no longer control your destiny. And that's a scary thing. And so usually one of the things as business attorneys that we try to do is find as many potential avenues that we can work with the other side to find a resolution that makes our folks happy, obviously buys peace with the other folks, and everybody gets back to doing what they're doing, which is presumably not sitting in a lawsuit all day.
Well, running their business.
Correct, exactly.
It drains you if you're in a litigation situation. Pre-trial, everything. It's all that's on your mind. And that's you got to help these people find it, because a business can be consumed by it. I've seen that happen.
Sure. And
I get that. Actually owned a business that we ended up in the Supreme Court of the United States. And
Yes.
We won it was on a technicality in the patent law, believe it or not. And it turned out to be a really big case. So we were the person they picked to be there. So I learned all about that process, but it took a lot of time to get there.
Sure.
I mean, and it took a lot of energy out of the business.
Yeah, it's funny, because sometimes we think that when we get involved with a lawyer and we hire a lawyer to help us in our business, that it is I'm handling this all over to you, and now you'll run it. And of course, in some degree, that's true. We want to. That's the reason people hire us, to get the expert advice to handle their issue, especially if it is in a lawsuit, and all of the not so common sense things and rules of evidence and procedure and all the things that we deal with. However, as you kind of alluded to, the truth is, even in the early stages of a lawsuit, we start having document production requests exchanged, for instance, and interrogatories and all these things that you've got to hunt through all your emails. You've got to hunt through all your documents. I need you to answer these questions, and then I'm going to work with you, and we're going to produce these things. Now it's time to take your deposition. We got to prep for that. There's all these things that, like you said, it's not a hand the car keys over and you drive. It's a we're very much driving together. And sometimes people don't realize how much work it is involving on a business, especially on a smaller business that maybe doesn't have just a in-house legal department that just kind of that's what they handle, but they are the in-house legal department. They're everything. It can be a fairly time-consuming process to do it.
Well, and the thing I hate is the owner or owners of the business, in many cases, it just consumes them. All they're thinking, they can't be building a business because they're thinking about this, whether it's the suit itself or the legal bills they're having to pay. They're just obsessed by it. And I get it, because they feel threatened, their business, what they built. It's interesting, and it's a place I try to keep people from going, if at all possible. Sometimes it isn't, as you say, 1% of the cases end up in trial, but there is a lot of litigation that never makes it to trial. Most of it doesn't, right? So
Correct.
it's a sad thing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our first break of the day, and I hope you'll continue to listen to the program. We'll come back and talk with Adam about some of the issues that you as a business person potentially need to avoid so you stay out of the courtroom. So please stay with us, and we'll be right back with you.
A Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
God's Garage is a 501c3 that repairs and gives away cars for free to single moms, widows, and wives of deployed military. You can help God's Garage by donating a vehicle, volunteering your time, or by monetary donation. God's Garage is located at 2106 East Davis, Conroe. If you'd like to learn more about God's Garage, visit our website at godsgarage.org. Or you can contact us, and we would be glad to come and make a presentation to your group.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and we're having a conversation today with one of the great attorneys here in Montgomery County, Adam Fracht. And we're talking about your business and the law and some practical ideas that you need to consider when operating your business and dealing with the law. Adam, when we went to break, we had kind of a conversation about why not to get into a trial. I mean, you can get in many lawsuits. Most lawsuits don't end up in a trial, but either way, they just can suck the energy right out of a business, a small business, because of the commitment, the concern, the worry, and the legal bills is right. So it's a place to avoid. Let's talk about some issues that you've seen where small business can avoid those kind of mistakes, and not just in having documents done right, but just some of the issues you've seen small businesses get into because they didn't do this or they did that. Let's just talk about that for a little bit if we can.
Sure. I think one of the most common misconceptions that I see, again, on the litigation side, which is the usually downstream by a year or two of the actual underlying events that led to the lawsuit, is that sometimes people think that it requires a formal contract to create an agreement. And what I mean by that is, we'll sit here, people will talk in email and text messages and think, well, that's not a formal agreement. That's not binding. I didn't sign a contract. That's not a four-corner piece of paper that's got my John Hancock at the bottom of it. But unfortunately, emails, text messages, things of that nature can just as easily form contracts. And they frequently do if you're not careful. So if you're talking with another party, be it a vendor or a customer, and there's conversations that are specific enough to say who, what, when, where, and more the what's being done, how much, I agree, or just even okay, sounds good. Things like that can back and forth in a text message can form an agreement. And so people do need to be somewhat careful that what you put in writing can actually form a binding agreement, even when it's really informal.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing always in my mind is business does business with other businesses as vendors who sell them product, who might do some kind of fabrication, whatever. And they typically have some kind of written contract. Maybe it's on the back of an invoice, the small print, right? And clients rarely, if ever, know what they agreed to. You know, I saw one the other day for payment, and I read it twice, and this was a proposal, but it talked about payment terms among other things. And I believe if the law hadn't changed, which I've been away from it for a while, that it was usurious. This vendor had made a mistake in doing what they did. Yeah. And I actually was involved with very indirectly with a case that went to state courts. Yes. And it was declared usurious, just a month-to-month amount. Right. And the guy got tired of it, and he filed a litigation, and they went to court. Yeah, and he won. Yes. And it wiped out what he owed, and it wasn't a lot of money. I mean, $1,000, $2,000, but he was tired of it.
Yeah, usury, which is of course for our listeners, is illegal amounts of interest, is oftentimes one of those things that we see as well, where you'll have. I mean, I've seen everything from someone had a promissory note that had 100% interest, which is way more than you can legally charge. And there are methods under the law that you can go and correct it, and if you act timely, you can mostly limit your damages. But knowing what you can legally charge in interest is really important. It's a lot, as you said, a lot of times with invoices and whatnot, we'll have clients that, as a business, they charge 5% a month or something. And you're like, whoa, that may look good on paper, but that you got to be really careful what you're doing. So you mentioned reading the fine print. That's important. As a tangent to that, the law deems you to know what you sign. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't always understand is you're deemed to know and have agreed to everything that you sign. So if it's a long contract that other business is having you sign, and you say, well, I'm just not going to, this is ridiculous, and you just flip to the last page and you sign it, the law is going to deem that you read all those prior pages, that you agreed all those prior pages. And so it's very hard and sobering when you come back and you say, well, I didn't read that. I didn't know that was in there. The court's going to say, well, you're deemed to know that it was. And so you have to be really careful, which again kind of harkens back to the idea of if it's a long contract that's got a lot of stuff in it, indemnities and all kinds of things that might sound a little bit iffy, talk to an attorney about it early. Another thing I'll tell you that's kind of a tangent, but one that is a frequent practice of ours, a lot of businesses are contractors for other businesses, right? They will build residential or commercial. They'll help build houses, structures. They'll come in and do sheetrock or electrical. They'll do all kinds of things that actually improve real property. And of course, when they come to us to try to collect on a debt that hasn't been paid, they're of course entitled to pursue that debt, and the limitations period on that's 4 years, which is pretty comfortable. However, one of the best ways for a contractor to get paid is to file what's called a mechanics lien. Mm-hmm. And a mechanics lien is a way that you can tie up the owner's property. Even if you're a subcontractor, you can tie up the owner's property with a lien and say, hey, I'm not paid. I need to get paid. But the deadlines for that are very fast. Usually, if it's commercial work, you're looking at basically the 15th day of the third month, complicated, 15th day of the third month after any given month that you do work. And for residential work, it's even shorter. Let me clarify. So if you're a subcontractor, you've got your action items start the 15th day of the third month. If you contracted directly with an owner, you have to the 15th day of the fourth month. Residential's is an even shorter time frame and has all kinds of stuff that has to be in the contract, or you can't file the lien. Liens are one of the best ways for our clients to get paid, but you have to make sure you've done it right and you've got to act quickly. And it's always a challenge for businesses, because the last thing you want to do is ruffle a lot of feathers when they're just 30 days past due, right? If it's a 30-day invoice and suddenly, now they're 30 days past that, and you want to just put it on your AR, and you want to, you call them and you start applying a little bit of pressure, but they're a good customer and you don't want to do too much. Well, Texas is probably one of the more complicated states for mechanics liens, and the time frame is pretty quick. And so you want to make sure you don't wait long. Like I said, we're talking a matter of months before you lose that lien right. And the nice thing about the lien right is, again, when you tie up the owner in a given matter, if you're a subcontractor and the owner's never heard of you, but when you file a lien on the property, now what does the owner do? He turns around and talks to contract, says, hey, I don't know who this is, but apparently they're a subcontractor of yours and you haven't paid them, so you need to get this done because I got a lien on my property. It's a wonderful tool to get folks paid, but you got to move quickly.
It's one of my favorite areas of the law because it works on your side every time if you follow the rules. And the other thing about those rules, and I had some actual work I did for contractors on that, and believe it or not, I had one client, they were owed $50,000, and it was a bonding situation. It was the city of Houston job, I believe, and they didn't meet the dates. And those deadlines under the law are absolutes. You're 1 day late, you can get poured out.
Correct.
Well, they were 2 days late, 3 days late. I mean, the timelines, and it drove me insane. I couldn't believe that because they were a fairly large business.
Right.
And anyway, so I asked if I could come on over and hold a little seminar and with the accounting people and who were responsible, and did a little thing and handed it to them. And anyway, went through it. Got, lo and behold, less than a year later, it's another $50,000.
Yeah.
And their accounting people, the financial people that were responsible, just couldn't keep that calendar straight.
Right.
And it broke my heart, really.
Sure.
It did.
When, as you mentioned, when the owner is a governmental entity, it's another level of complexity because usually then it's a bonded project. You can't just lien the property of the government. Government gets to say no to that. But you're right. I mean, the moral of the story is when you have unpaid debts that are related to work you did to improve real property, don't delay. Usually, I would say if it's a 30-day turnaround time to get you paid on your invoice and you're 45 days out from when you sent it and they still haven't paid, go ahead and call your attorney and let them know because sometimes we'll have a situation where somebody calls on the 14th of the month when the 15th of the month is the deadline to do it. It's very, very hard to get it all done. It takes at least a few days to get all the pieces in place to file the lien or to do the pre-lien notices and other things required.
Well, on the flip side, I actually had somebody that was a small subcontractor on a job. I think it was around $800,000, $1 million construction job. And back in the day, that was quite a bit of money. I mean, it was a daycare center or something, freestanding building, and they didn't pay. The owner got into a fight with the contractor over some quality issues and so on and so forth. All of them totally unrelated to my client, and but we followed the lien law. And at the end of the day, we were the only ones that got paid.
That's a great feeling, isn't it?
It was great. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of money in the tens of thousands, but still, I could tell that client, said, hey, you're the only one that got paid. So go do it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wonderful. There are a number of areas in the law, though, that can work in your advantage, like the lien law. And I think you need to have counsel. And depending on the type of business, there are areas that can make a difference. UCC filings, just general things that can make all the difference in the world. And like my contractor on the daycare center, nobody else was doing it. The contractor, the big guys, if you will, on the job, had not followed the law, apparently.
Right.
Because the attorney representing the owner said, you're the only one that's gotten paid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because of all these things that we're talking about. It's kind of like foreign policy. If you do it right, you don't see the wars, you don't see the screw ups as a result of bad foreign policy. And sometimes the law is the same way. If you do it right early on, you don't see the lawsuits, you don't see the big disputes because you did it right. And so it's sometimes having set up the right contracts, follow the right procedures, making sure you've done it right, you're just getting things resolved. Things are moving along. Your business is progressing without all of these hiccups. And so, which is why, unfortunately, for a lot of times you see where someone gets burned, and now they'll never do it that way again, right? And they go back and from there forward, make sure that early on they're doing the right things they need to do, and when the times call for it, go ahead and involve counsel to make sure we're making the right moves early on.
Yeah, it's called experience.
That's right.
Paid for.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that small business people, or business people maybe in general, but I've known it with small business people kind of, if at the very least, they'll kind of winch about, hey, I pay a professional. That could be an architect. It could be, but lawyers, they're going to send me a bill. And it's going to be a bill that's got to be outrageous, or not necessarily the total amount, but they bill on a quarter hour or whatever system, and all I did was send them an email, and so they go into it with that mindset. So many of them, which is the reason, I believe, main reason that a lot of them won't take the step to pick up a phone or whatever and contact their lawyer, or find a good lawyer to begin with, which is one of the things I teach my clients in building their business, is have a good lawyer available and meet with them on a regular basis just to talk about your business. But how do you approach that? I mean, the billing situation, you're talking to a potential new client or whatnot. How do you bring them comfort enough where they'll go ahead and, for other reasons as well, decide to do business with you?
Sure, that's a good question. I think first and foremost, you always got to be honest with people. You should, as an attorney, we should never undersell or underrepresent what something is going to involve, on a certain course of action. If we are blessed to be in the position where, on again a litigation type issue, where we are the kind of the proactive party, and we have the choice of, option A is try to amicably resolve, mediation, other things early on. Option B over here is, let's go ahead and file the lawsuit. Let's go for it and build some pressure. There's good times. There's good use cases for both of those when they might be applicable. But it's important that clients know early on when we go, the lawsuit route, for instance, that we are starting a machine that we may not have unilateral control to stop. And I always tell people that when we get going. Lots of times when we have a dispute between businesses, when you sue the business, the plaintiff business sues the defendant business, what's the adage? The best defense, a good offense, right? And so we tell people, if there is something that they might turn around and try to sue you for, they probably will sue you for it, because how else do you create leverage both ways? And so the end result of that is now you've got a machine running that you can't just hit the eject button. Now they've got to let go of their claims too. And so I say all that to say, we need to tell people, option A, the amicable approach, we can do these things. They may not work, they may not listen, but you control it. We can control, the costs are controllable. Option B, with a lawsuit, here's where it could go. We could spend X amount going through trial. Is it statistically likely to go through trial? No, but it could go. And lawsuits do often run for a fairly long amount of time. And people sometimes are surprised to hear that usually at a minimum, lawsuits go for 3 to 6 months. And on the long end, I would say on average, they probably run a year or two. And then some of the long ones you've got for 4 or 5 years. And that's a lot of expense. So we want to be very eyes wide open. I think that's the first thing, is to let you know what's the potential ramifications of legal action. And we want to give you a good idea of kind of an estimate of what costs could look like when you're going in, and make sure that it's your decision to make which path you choose. And there's a myriad of paths between all of these, but it's ultimately your call. We just want you to be informed when you make that decision, knowing kind of what the potential benefits are and the potential costs. So that's always good for people to know early on. We want people to know also that people pay their lawyer a lot of money. It's just for any of us, it's not a cheap service, just generally speaking, the legal field. So people should see value in what they do. I think that for our business clients, I always want you to know of any potential off-ramps or any potential avenues of resolution as we go along, even in a lawsuit. here's this, do you want to consider doing this? Here's that. And sometimes the answer is no, we want to continue to take this forward. And sometimes the answer is let's explore what we can do because, as you said, lawsuits are a very intensive process. And so we just want people to always be apprised of their options and always feel comfortable telling us, hey, here's where we are in the realities of our business. I should never be dictating to my client, you have to do this, because only they know how their business runs best. And I want to listen to that, and I want to help factor that in, that context into what are a myriad of options that might work for your business in this circumstance. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful points. Quick story. You talk about losing control, which I had mentioned something earlier, which is a big issue for me when I was practicing law to convey that to people. And I have an example that was just amazing. We were in federal court, and it was an employee health insurance issue. Insurance company would not, for a technicality, would not pay the claim, and it was a six-figure claim. So the employee had to sue her employer, who she was very happy with. They didn't feel they were important, but that they had any part in doing this. Mm-hmm. And then there were two or three other defendants. Anyway, we go for a pretrial hearing to federal court, and the judge says, I want all the parties to come back here in the conference room. And so I had a young associate with me. I said, why don't you go get the experience? And he knew the case. And one of the clients, was a family-owned business, 3 or 4 family members, brothers. They hardworking people. And so anyway, the judge looks at everybody, as I was told back to me, and says, okay, the claim is X, right? And here's the bills, and he says, you're going to pay, $20,000. You're going to pay $50,000, and went around the room, including our client, who had to pay. I thought it was way off, but they had made a mistake, okay, in their health insurance program, in classification of what an employee was or not. They paid their people a percentage of sales, and this lady ran a store for them. And I happened to be in a family business at one time. We had done that, but the Fifth Circuit told us we couldn't do that anymore. We weren't trying to skirt the law. So we went to pay them by hourly, and they made less money. So, but this case, that did not meet the definition of an employee, even though they've been taking their money for 5 to 10 years. Nobody worried about it, right? But the judge, you talk about out of control, he just told everybody, this is what you're going to, and it was done. He wanted the case off his docket, right?
That sounds it.
And he got it off his docket. And I won't use his name. He was considered quite a character in his day. But I never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
And I probably never will.
Federal judges, they will tell you how they feel.
Well, he said, without saying he wanted us gone.
Yeah.
And everybody just kind of walked out like they, shell-shocked. But he got executed and he got done. So just another reason to be wary of lawsuits.
Sure.
Because you lose control just in a blink. And we were totally blindsided. We had no idea that would come up, this issue.
Well, and sometimes you don't have control because sometimes you are the party being sued.
Right.
And that is harder because, it's frustrating to feel, A, whatever the other party is claiming against you is unjustified, and B, now you have to get an attorney. And if you're a business and you're anything really above JP court, you have to have an attorney. You can't represent, you can represent yourself at county and district courts, but not recommended, but you can do it. But for a business, you need to get an attorney, or they can actually strike your answer, and you could risk a default judgment against you. So I get it. People especially get frustrated with now not only do I have this dispute, now I have to hire an attorney to defend me. And so that's a tough circumstance to be there. But it's still the same thing that we're looking. And if I have good opposing counsel, this is one of the things that makes such a world of difference when you have attorneys on both sides that are both kind of keeping the eye on the prize, which is usually for a business, a resolution that both parties can live with. And we're problem solvers. That's what we frequently are. I've got cases right now with wonderful opposing counsel. We disagree on many things, and we both play the part. But part of what we do is try to work together to find what's possible solutions that can work, that can resolve the issue. Conversely, I've got a case right now with an opposing counsel who, every time I talk to him and him alone, on the phone, his client not there, he is still putting on the show. He's still being very, very adversarial, and I'll tell you, it makes such a world of difference when you don't have that. When you've got someone you can say, okay, let's really get down to brass tacks and see what we can work with. We obviously we're going to defend our clients. We're going to do what we got to do, but let's start having a conversation of what could possibly work.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. And again, you bring some more uncertainty into things because you don't know who the other side's going to be represented by.
Correct.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation, Adam, very much. Appreciate you joining us. If people want to reach out to you and maybe have a question about something you said today or potentially engage you, what's the best way for them to do it?
So our number at Stibs & Co. is 281-367-2222. That's our main number. They can also email me. My email address is Fracht, which is Fracht. So A for Adam and then Fracht. And it's at stibsco.com, STIBBSCO.com.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to dip in the mailbag. I've got an interesting topic that somebody asked my opinion about, and I'm going to go back in time a little bit and use some of the information we got from an expert way back when to answer his question. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776.
Every Friday, tune into Texas Ticket on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 FM with Armando Nino of Gold Lake Conroe, focusing on Montgomery County area events and places. Get a feel of the Texas spirit at the event, paired with guest and vendor interviews, event coverage, and ticket giveaways, and so much more. Join us Fridays and punch your Texas ticket. For more information on the show, visit irlonestar.com/Texas Ticket.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Hey there, Conroe. This is Andrew from the Audience of One show that airs Wednesdays at 10 a.m. right here on KZCC 106.1 and 104.5 FM. Make sure to tune in and keep it on for Community Radio's version of a slow motion train wreck. You will hear our take on some of the world's oddest news, our mind droppings, and general banter from your favorite radio friends, me and Dick Schisler. We are also available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and I hope you were able to catch the entire conversation we had with Adam Fracht. He's with Stibs & Co., law firm here and in a number of cities. And we talked about litigation. We talked about the impact of the law or what it potentially could be to your business. But I found it very, very interesting to learn some of the things that happens, and a lot of it shouldn't happen. We should prepare our businesses so we don't get caught up in that. We're going to skip over here to the mailbag. We've got a great topic. I want to make sure you know that a copy of today's video podcast will be available by Wednesday of this week. It'll be out there on all the social media channels, and particularly Facebook, YouTube, etc. Just go look up the Weekly Business Hour, or you can come right here to Lone Star Community Radio, their website at www.irlonestar.com. LoneStar.com. Click on the morning shows, and you'll find the weekly business hour, and there's a number of our shows available if you'd like to watch and learn. So please do so. Well, let's go to the mailbag. We've got a few minutes left in the program today, and we got a question from Emmett. And this is one we've talked about on this show over the last 8 or 9 years that we've been doing it on a frequent basis. That's about selling your business, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And most recently, a couple months ago, we had Mr. Rich Hall. Rich is a certified business sales person. He is well trained formally and informally as a small businessman to sell a business. And it's a process and their checklist. And one of the key factors is you really start selling your business the day you start your business in a broad sense. But let's talk for a minute. And the question I got from Emmett was, I'm considering selling my business. There's thousands of people out there right now that are in the very same spot that Emmett is. What about, how do I ensure myself of getting the value for my business? What are some things I really have to zero in? I went and turned back time a little bit and looked at some of the things that Rich Hall had recommended, and I think that a little bit of the checklist that he offered in this particular industry, which is basically value. How do I create value? How do I put it together? How do I represent it? Very, very important part, obviously, of the equation of getting the most for your business when you go to sell it. And that is an assumption that you really want to maximize the return, the amount of money you get for your business. Some people just want to sell it, hand over the keys, and get out of Dodge, so to speak. I respect that. That's your choice, your business, your decision. But if you're trying to maximize the return, as a number of people are, here are some things you really need to consider. First of all, you are, as Rich said and talked about a little bit on his last appearance, it's about creating value. And remember that word value. You want to create value in your business. In other words, someone walks in and they look at your business and they get a sense of the value. Not just what they see. Of course, you've got financials, you've got numbers, you've got sales, statistics, and all that information, which quantifies as well as qualifies and should verify exactly what the business is doing. But how the plant looks, how the trucks look, whatever your assets are, your people, how they're performing, all these things create value. But one of the things that increases the attractiveness of that business, in other words, gives it more value to a potential buyer, some of the things are, one, minimizing your involvement in the business. In other words, they're going to buy a business, but they're not buying you. So you've got to build some kind of team leadership that goes with the business. It increases the price you're going to get for the business. You've got to be able to show future growth potential. Why do I want to buy your business and just operate it and do the same? People want to grow. Financial statements, obviously, one you need. And you preferably will get more money if you have 2 or 3 years of financial statements that have been reviewed or audited by an outside CPA firm, because they are verified, in a sense, in the transaction world. You need to have an efficient and documented operational procedures and processes. What happens if? How do you handle your complaints or returns, and so on and so? How do you dispatch? How do you put an order in? Everything needs to be organized and preferably recorded. The old notebook that people had that had all the operational procedures, that makes a difference. You know how to run that business typically off the top of your head, and you know the numbers off the top of your head. But if I'm buying your business, I don't. And the last thing is make sure that your key customers are in the right place, that you have them locked down the best you can, and your relationship is great, so that when I, as a buyer, call and talk to these customers, I get the impression that they're locked in either by a contract or just relationship. Those are some things to consider. And Emmett, good luck. Preferably you have several years to put this together, and you're not forced to sell next week, next month, or even next year. You will return your return on investment, your maximization of value will be a lot easier if you give yourself 3 to 4 years to put it together and put all this information together and make your business look like it's valuable. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I want to thank our friend Adam Fracht for joining us in the conversation we had about the impact of the law on operating a business. And I encourage you, join us again next week. Next week's show is going to be a great one, and I encourage you to join us. And in the meantime, you need to stay engaged. My encouragement, stay engaged in your business, but always, always keep the focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.